Hello friends, today we are going to discuss about the fetoplacental unit, then we are going to discuss about the parturition and finally sex differentiation. So let's get started. So first thing first, what is the fetoplacental unit? See, there is one problem with the placenta in order to synthesize a hormone. So fetus and the placenta, they get interact with each other in the formation of the steroid hormone. So basically some of the enzyme are not present in the placenta and some of the enzyme are not present at the fetal adrenal. So both this tissue, placenta and fetal, will interact with each other and provide a substance or raw material in order to synthesize a steroid hormone. So let's, for example, the fetal adrenal gland does not have a enzyme to synthesize this 3 beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase, and because of the absence of this 3 beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase enzyme, fetal adrenal are not able to make a cortisol. So let's understand what I'm trying to say. First thing first, the cholesterol will enter inside the placenta. See, placenta is not able to synthesize its own cholesterol, so it depends to the maternal circulation for the cholesterol. So once the cholesterol will enter inside the placenta, that cholesterol will eventually converted into the pregnenolone. You know the enzyme, it is a desmolase. So after conversion of the pregnenolone, this pregnenolone with the help of 3 beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase dehydrogenated at third carbon and make a progesterone. Now this progesterone will goes to the fetal adrenal via the circulation, and this progesterone inside the fetal adrenal gland it will converted into the cortisol or the corticosterone. Pregnenolone, on the other hand, if it entered inside the fetal circulation, it converted into the androgen known as DHEAS. Now what is DHEAS? It is dehydroepiandrosterone. Alright, and this dehydroepiandrosterone gets sulfated at 16th hydroxylated at 16th carbon and then sulfated. It is known as a 16 hydroxy dehydroepiandrosterone sulfate, right? So fetal adrenal cortex, if we become more precise, it is the inner zone of a cortex that is eventually degraded once the fetus is born. So this fetal adrenal cortex or the inner zone or the fetal zone cannot synthesize its corticosteroid or the cortisol, because fetal adrenal gland does not have a which enzyme, 3-BHSD, that is 3 beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. This enzyme system is blocked, and after a certain period of the time this enzyme will appear and fetal adrenal does not now need the progesterone from the placenta. Now this this DHEAS and 16 hydroxy DHEAS will eventually diffuse inside the placenta, and inside the placenta this DHEAS will eventually make a estradiol, the active form, and 16 hydroxy DHEAS will converted into the estriol. Got it? And majority of the portion is the estriol and the minor portion is the estradiol. So you can easily know that the major estrogen inside a pregnant lady is estriol. Got it? So estriol somehow will be used in order to know the status of a pregnancy. So estriol excretion of a mother can be monitored as an index of the status of the fetus. You see, whatever the estriol that is formed by the placenta, that estriol is basically made from 16-OH DHEAS. Now this 16-OH DHEAS that is present inside the placenta is actually transferred from the fetal adrenal. So if the fetal adrenal is not working properly, if the 16 hydroxylation that is occur inside. See this 16 hydroxylation that is happens inside this fetal circulation. It is basically in the fetal liver. So this estriol excretion of a mother can be monitored as the index of a status of a fetus. Now see, in this diagram I shown you the thing that DHEAS will converted into 16OH DHEAS, right? Because to make you understand, but actually this conversion, this 16 hydroxylation will not take place inside the adrenal gland, but it is actually happens inside the liver. So fetal liver is actually convert DHEAS into 16OH DHEAS, and this 16OH DHEAS will transported back to the placenta where it converted into estriol. Alright, so the principal estrogen that is formed during the pregnancy is estriol. Now there are certain facts that you need to understand or you need to remember is that placenta cannot synthesize its own cholesterol. So it obtained cholesterol from the mother. CHO stands for cholesterol. Now placenta cannot synthesize estrone and estradiol from cholesterol because it has a lack of the enzyme 17 hydroxylase and 1720 lyase. So placenta, in order to synthesize estrogen, it get its intermediate product from the fetus. Got it? That is 16OH DHEAS and DHEAS. So placenta actually not synthesize estriol directly because it has a lack of 617 hydroxylase and 1720 lyase. Now one more thing, that this conversion of DHEAS into 16OH DHEAS is also not happens inside the placenta. Why? Because placenta does not have a 16 alpha hydroxylase, so it obtain 16OH DHEAS from the fetus, and then it remove the sulfate and aromatize it into the estriol. So placental estriol depend on 16OH DHEAS from the fetal adrenal gland, and estriol in the mother will be the index of the fetal health. Got it? Now let's discuss about the parturition. Now what is the parturition? Parturition is actually the process of birth of a baby. There are 3 stages of a parturition. It is known as the 3 stages of a labor. So birth of a baby, it is known as parturition. Now towards the end of the pregnancy, uterus become progressively more excitable, and finally it develops a strong rhythmical contraction, and then baby get expelled. Now in order to do parturition, there are 2 major effects will leads to the intense contraction of a uterus. One that effect is the hormonal changes, and the other that effect is the mechanical changes. Now let's discuss one by one what are the hormonal changes. So there are basically 3 hormonal changes that eventually increase the uterine contractility. The first hormonal changes is the ratio of estrogen and progesterone. So amount of estrogen is getting greater as compared to the progesterone. So more amount of estrogen than the progesterone inside the maternal circulation. Second hormonal changes is that increase the effect of oxytocin, and the third effect is that fetus will develop cortisol, increase fetal cortisol level. So let's discuss one by one how these hormonal changes will eventually leads to the parturition. So first one is the increased ratio of estrogen to progesterone. Now I told you in our earlier lecture that progesterone is designed to prevent expulsion of a fetus. In other words, progesterone is designed to preserve pregnancy. So basically progesterone will decrease the uterine contractility, and by doing this it will prevent the expulsion of a fetus. Now what estrogen has effect? Estrogen will increase the uterine contractility. How? It increase the number of gap junction between the uterine smooth muscle. This is the one reason. There are other reason also, but this one is the given in the Gannon, so we stick to this reason. what estrogen do? Estrogen will increase the uterine contractility by increasing the number of gap junction between the uterine smooth muscle cell. So the action potential from one cell will eventually transfer to the next cell. So what happens at the end of the pregnancy? Ratio of estrogen increase as compared to progesterone towards the end of the pregnancy. So it is increased contractility of a uterus. Now if you want the figure is that from 7th month onward, estrogen secretion will continuously increase while the progesterone secretion will remain constant. See, progesterone secretion will also at the higher amount, but after this 7 month, the estrogen secretion is progressively increasing, and the time comes when the estrogen is higher side than the progesterone, and the estrogen to progesterone ratio increase sufficiently toward the end of the pregnancy, and this ratio will ultimately make a small portion of the increased uterine contractility. There are other reasons also. Let's discuss the other hormone, that is oxytocin. Now you guys are familiar with the oxytocin. It is a hormone secreted by neurophysis or the posterior pituitary. And what is the function of oxytocin? It will increase the uterine contractility. Now as the labor start, at the time of the labor there is an increased secretion of the oxytocin at the time of the labor. And one more thing that estrogen do is that estrogen increase the number of receptor in the myometrium. It will actually increase the oxytocin receptor about 100-fold. So estrogen has a two effect. One effect that we discussed in our previous slide, that is as the estrogen level increase then the progesterone, then estrogen will increase the contractility of the uterine muscle by increasing the gap junction between the adjacent smooth muscle. Next effect that is written on this slide, it is estrogen will increase the oxytocin receptor up to the 100-fold. So if the oxytocin level is not even increased, yet oxytocin will be 100% or 100 times more effective. Why? Because estrogen will increase the oxytocin receptor 100-fold. Now next one is the effect of fetal cortisol. Now let's understand this thing. So basically increase the CRH secretion by the fetal hypothalamus will eventually increase the circulating ACTH inside the fetus. Now pay attention, this one that we are talking about, the CRH and ACTH inside the fetus. So during the time of a labor there is an increase, or just before the labor there is increased CRH secretion by fetal hypothalamus, and this fetal hypothalamus will eventually increase ACTH inside the fetus, and obviously this ACTH will eventually enter inside the fetal adrenal gland and it will increase the cortisol secretion. Now what cortisol do, that we already discussed in our corticosteroid lecture. The main effect of the cortisol, it increase the maturation of a lung in the fetus, and fetus will pick up the time to born by increasing the CRH secretion. So it's fetus who decide when to born, right, by increasing the CRH secretion. This is the another hormonal changes. Now let's discuss the mechanical factors, how the mechanical factors will eventually causes the parturition. So whenever the uterine contraction starts, it causes the stretch of a uterine musculature, and it will lead to stretching of the smooth muscle. It eventually increase the contractility. Now as the uterine smooth muscle will contract, fetal head will be pushed toward the cervix. So what happens? It causes stretching of a cervix. Now this stretching initiate a reflex contraction of a body of a uterus by positive feedback mechanism. Now what is this positive feedback mechanism? That positive feedback mechanism itself known as a Ferguson reflex. Right? So once what is Ferguson reflex, let's discuss that topic. What is the Ferguson reflex? This is the Ferguson reflex. So you can see that when baby push against whenever the oxytocin secretion increase, that oxytocin will eventually increase the myometrial contraction. That myometrial contraction will eventually push the fetus toward the cervix. As the fetal head will push against the cervix, it causes the stretching of a cervix. Now the stretching of the cervix will generate a nerve impulse. That nerve impulse will eventually reach to the posterior pituitary or the neurophysis, and the neurophysis will release oxytocin, and again this oxytocin will increase the uterine contraction even more. And as the uterine contraction increase, it causes push down of the fetal head toward the cervix, and cervix become more stretched. This cycle repeat itself again and again till the baby is born. So what you should write it down: once the labor start, uterus starts contracting, it stretches the cervix, signal goes to the brain. Inside the brain, from the posterior pituitary, there is increased oxytocin secretion from the neurophysis, and more amount of increased uterine contraction. This positive feedback cycle itself is known as a Ferguson reflex. Now let's write it down in the positive feedback mechanism. So whenever the baby's head stretch to the cervix, cervical stretch excite the uterine contraction, right, by Ferguson reflex, and uterine contraction push the baby down and stretch the cervix even more. Now this cycle repeat over and over until the baby is born or baby is expelled. It is known as a positive feedback cycle. Now from this very slide, there are there are comment will ask 2 times in the Saurashtra University paper. The name of the comment is like this: positive feedback control system helps in parturition. You have to write it down, this 6 sentence, and that's it, you get 2 marks. Now this is all about the parturition. Now let's understand the sexual differentiation. So how the sexual differentiation occur inside the embryo? So there are 3 type of the sex differentiation that you need to understand. One is the chromosomal sex or the genotype sex, another one is the gonadal sex, and third one is the phenotype sex. So what is the difference between these 3 type of sex? So let's see that. Chromosomal or genotype sex is basically design or determine the gonadal sex. That chromosomal sex is XX or XY. Now this chromosomal sex will eventually determine the gonadal sex. Now what is gonadal sex? Gonadal sex is that the person, whether the person having testis or person having the ovary. So basically this is the gonadal sex, which gonads are actually present inside that person, and this gonadal sex will eventually determine the phenotype sex. Now what is phenotype sex? It is basically the internal and external genitalia itself. So this is the 3 type of the sex. One is the chromosomal sex, another one is the gonadal sex, third one is the phenotype sex. So as far as the chromosomal sex is concerned, is basically the XX and XY. Then what is the gonadal sex? It is whether the presence of testis or ovary, the presence of gonad will define the gonadal sex. And phenotype sex is the presence of internal and external genitalia. Got it? Now determination of the chromosomal sex. How the chromosomal sex will be determined? Now this chromosomal sex is actually determined at the time of a fertilization. Now it establishes the fertilization. See, ovum contains 22 chromosome plus X, and sperm has a 2 type of the set. 50% is 22 plus X and 50% is 22 plus Y. So if ovum is fertilized by X bearing sperm, the chromosomal sex become female because it is XX. If ovum is fertilized by Y bearing sperm, then the chromosomal sex is become XY, that is become male. The chromosomal sex become male. This is how the determination of the chromosomal sex will take place. Now how the differentiation of a gonadal sex occurs? See this. Now till 6 week, intrauterine life, fetus has a gonad that is bipotential. Now the gonad that is shown in this diagram, it is the upper region that is shown. It is a bipotential gonads. Now what is bipotential gonads? Bipotential gonads has a tendency to develop any gonads. It may develop inside into ovary, it may be able to develop into the testis. So bipotential gonad, so till 6 week of intrauterine life we cannot say which gonads are actually present inside the fetus, because till the 6th week it is bipotential. It has a tendency to develop anyone. It may be developed testis, it may be developed into the ovary according to the chromosomal sex. So bipotential gonad has a two regions, one is the medulla and another one is the cortex. So if the child is eventually be genetic male, in the genetic male, then the medulla will differentiate into the testis. Got it? If the child is genetic female, if the chromosomal sex is XX, then it is the cortex that differentiate into the ovary. Got it? So how the gonadal sex will be determined? The gonadal sex will be determined by the chromosomal sex. If it is XY, then the medulla of the bipotential gonad will differentiate into the testis. If it is XX, then it is the cortex of the bipotential gonad will differentiate into the ovary. So the differentiation of a gonadal sex. How the XY will eventually made a testis. Let's see this thing. Now in genetic male, Y chromosome is actually determined the gonads. See, this is the Y chromosome. You see there are red color portion that is shown over the top, over the short arm, that is sex determining region, that is SRY. This SRY is responsible for generation of a testis. Now this SIRY gene is on the Y chromosome and testis determining factor. It has a testis determining factor. Now as we know that up to the 6th week the gonads are bipotential. In the 7th and 8th week medulla will differentiate into the testis, and Sertoli cell will appear at the 7th week, and the Sertoli cell will secrete MIS. That what is the MIS? MIS is the Mullerian inhibiting substance. Got it? And Leydig cell will appear at the 8th week, and this Leydig cell will secrete the testosterone. Got it? So basically it is SRY gene that is responsible for differentiation of a medulla into the testis. Once the testis is formed, in the Sertoli cell will appear on the 7th week, and the Sertoli cell will secrete MIS, and it will causes the regression of a Mullerian duct. Now Leydig cell will appear at the 8th week and it will secrete the testosterone. Now how the differentiation of the internal organ will take place? Now till the 7th week fetus has a two duct that form the internal organ or internal genitalia. One is known as the Wolffian duct, that is shown in this diagram by blue color, and next one is the Mullerian duct that is shown by this violet color. Got it? This one is the Wolffian duct and this one is the Mullerian duct. Now male internal genitalia will develop from the Wolffian duct, and female internal genitalia will eventually develop from the Mullerian duct. So if we want male internal genitalia, what we want to regress the Mullerian duct and stimulate the Wolffian duct. So to regress the Mullerian duct, this Sertoli cell will secrete MIS, that MIS will regress the Mullerian duct, and testosterone that is secreted by Leydig cell, it eventually stimulate the Wolffian duct. Got it? So how the differentiation will take place in male? So in male, basically testis will develop at the 7th week. This testis has a two type of the cell that we already know, Sertoli cell and the Leydig cell. Sertoli cell will secrete the MIS, that MIS or Mullerian inhibiting substance. Now in some books it is written as a AMH, anti-Mullerian hormone. Now this MIS will regress the Mullerian duct, or regeneration of the Mullerian regression of the Mullerian duct will take place. Leydig cell will secrete the testosterone, and this testosterone will stimulate the Wolffian duct. Now, what Wolffian duct will eventually do? Wolffian duct will differentiate into the male internal genitalia. Now, what are the male internal genitalia that we already discussed? That is red testis, epididymis, vas deferens, and seminal vesicle. Now, this is what happens in the male, but what happens in the female? Now, in the female, testis is not present, obviously, because female has a XX chromosome. It does not have a sex determining region SRY. So because of absence of the testis will not able to synthesize it inside the female. There is absence of MIS and testosterone. Now in the absence of the testosterone, Wolffian duct will regenerate. In the absence of MIS will eventually develop the Mullerian duct proliferation. Got it? So Mullerian duct will start proliferating and differentiate into the female internal genitalia. Now, what are the female internal genitalia? Already we are discussing. We have already discussed that thing: uterine tube, uterus, and upper 2/3 of the vagina. This is all about how the differentiation of the internal genitalia will take place. Now discuss the differentiation of the external genitalia. Now till 8th week of the intrauterine life, external genitalia are bipotent. Now from which tissue the external genitalia will develop? Let's enumerate that tissue: urogenital sinus, genital swelling, genital fold, and genital tubercle. So in absence of testosterone, the female external genitalia develop. It is a setting button. If there is no testosterone, that the person having female external genitalia. If the person have a testosterone, then male genitalia develop. Now how the testosterone will stimulate the male external genitalia? Testosterone will convert into the DHT, that is dihydrotestosterone. It is the active form of the testosterone, and this dihydrotestosterone is responsible for formation of the external genitalia or male external genitalia. Now let's enumerate which structure of this bipotential gonad make which portion of the external genitalia. So these are the set: urogenital sinus, genital swelling, genital fold, and genital tubercle. Now let's see how the male external genitalia develop, from which portion. Now urogenital sinus will eventually make a prostate and prostatic urethra. Genital swelling will make a scrotum. Genital fold will make a shaft of a penis, and genital tubercle will make a glans penis. Now what they form in the female? Urogenital sinus will make a lower 1/3 of a vagina. Then genital swelling will make a labia majora. Genital fold will make a labia minora, and genital tubercle will make a clitoris. Right? These are how the differentiation of the external genitalia will take place. Now this is all about the chromosomal sex, gonadal sex, and phenotype sex. Now let's summarize what we learned till now. Up to 6 week. See, this slide is very much important. If you remember this slide, you can easily able to write it down, all the slides that we mentioned in our previously. So till 6 week there are bipotential gonad. So till the 6th week the gonad has a capacity to develop testes. It has a capacity to develop ovary. Now in the 7th week male develop testes and female develop ovary. Now we are precisely which gonad is going to be. Till 8th week differentiate it. In the 8th week there is a differentiation of internal genitalia, and finally at the 9th week there is a differentiation of the external genitalia. Right? It is simple. 6, 7, 8, 9. At the 6th week gonad is not differentiated. At 7th week gonad are differentiated. At 8th week there are internal genitalia differentiated, and at the 9th week external genitalia will differentiated. Now what happens whenever there is abnormality in this differentiation? There is abnormal sexual differentiation. First thing, when abnormalities of chromosomal sex, and second one is the abnormality of the phenotype sex. Now what is phenotype sex? That is development of a internal and external genitalia. If there is a problem with external or internal genitalia, then there is abnormality of phenotype sex. When there is a problem with chromosomal sex, it is has a Klinefelter syndrome, Turner syndrome, and true hermaphroditis. Now what is Klinefelter syndrome? What is Turner syndrome? You already know. You already learn in the 12th, and you are going to learn in very detail in anatomy in the genetic portion. Now what is true hermaphroditis? Now pay attention. True hermaphroditis, it is a person or individual who born with both the gonads, ovary as well as testis. So in true hermaphroditis, person having develop ovary from a cortex and testis from medulla. The tissue that has both ovarian and testicular growth, it is known as ovotestis. Got it? So true hermaphroditis has a both gonads, ovotestis, ovarian and testis. So it is known as ovotestis. So it is true, then there might be one false. That false hermaphroditis, it is known as a pseudo hermaphroditis. Now what is the pseudo hermaphroditis that we discuss in our phenotype sex? It is a female pseudo hermaphroditis and male pseudo hermaphroditis. Now what is the pseudo means? Pseudo means individual having a chromosomal sex of one and genitalia of other sex. So in female pseudo hermaphroditis, and what happens in male pseudo hermaphroditis, let's discuss one by one. So what is pseudo hermaphroditis? The person have a chromosome and gonad of one sex and genitalia of the other sex. It has a two types that we already write it down, the female and male pseudo hermaphroditis. Now in female pseudo hermaphroditis, the female chromosome and gonadal sex is present, but instead of female it has a male external genitalia. Right it? So female hermaphroditis is actually chromosomally female. It is a female chromosome and it is a female gonads, but external genitalia somehow develop into the male's external genitalia. Now in the same case, male pseudo hermaphroditis is actually a male, that male chromosomal sex and male gonadal sex, but it has a female phenotype sex. It has a female external genitalia. Now how the female pseudo hermaphroditis develop? Let's discuss this thing. Now what happens in the female pseudo hermaphroditis? It has a male external genitalia. So first discuss how the male external genitalia will develop in the male, then we collaborate that knowledge with the female. So in genetic male, the male external genitalia develop due to the androgen secretion by the embryonic testis, that is testosterone. Got it? So why inside a male external genitalia develop? Because inside a male fetus, testis will secrete a testosterone. The testosterone will eventually make a external genitalia, right? So what happens in the female pseudo hermaphroditis? How female pseudo hermaphroditis will develop male external genitalia? Simple. If we expose the female fetus to the higher amount of testosterone, so if genetic female will expose to the androgen during the 8th to 13th week of the gestation, then the male genitalia develop. Though this androgen is not synthesized by gonads itself, but it is externally injected. Got it? So male genitalia will develop, and that condition having a female chromosomal sex and male phenotype sex, it is known as female hermaphroditis. Now what are the causes? Causes are the congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So in congenital adrenal hyperplasia, there is a deficiency of the 11 hydroxylase and 21 hydroxylase. So eventually all the pregnenolone and progesterone will converted into the androgen. That androgen is in the higher side. That androgen will eventually make a male genital development. If you don't know what is the 11 hydroxylase deficiency and what is 21 hydroxylase deficiency and how in congenital adrenal hyperplasia will eventually shift the steroid mechanism in the higher formation of adrenal androgen. Go through my adrenal cortex lecture number 5. Second one is the external administration of the androgen to the mother. It will causes the female pseudohermaphroditism. Now, how male pseudohermaphroditism develop? So in genetic male gonad, it has a male gonads and defective testis. So whenever the testis is defective, testis is not able to form MIS and testosterone. Now see, MIS is eventually going to regress the Mullerian duct and testosterone will stimulate the Wolffian duct. So if there is no MIS and no testosterone, then the female internal genitalia will develop. Alright, MIS will eventually regress the female Mullerian duct, but in the absence of the MIS, Mullerian duct will be stimulated, and in the absence of testosterone, Wolffian duct will be inhibited. So finally, the female internal genitalia will develop. And if there is no DHT, no dihydrotestosterone, so there are no male external genitalia. Got it? So what are the causes of the male pseudohermaphroditis? The causes are very simple to understand. Deficiency of the 17 alpha hydroxylase. So when there is no 17 alpha hydroxylase, there are no chances of formation of the androgen and no chances of formation of the testosterone. Deficiency of the 5 alpha reductase. Now what the 5 alpha reductase do? 5 alpha reductase will convert testosterone into dihydrotestosterone. So no more dihydrotestosterone and no more external male genitalia will develop. Next one is defect in testosterone receptor itself. If the testosterone receptor is defective, then if the testosterone is present but it is not able to act, it is supposed to act, right? And next one is the androgen resistance. If the androgen is there but androgen is not able to act its normal way, then there are no chances of the formation of the testosterone and no chances of formation of the DHT. So no more male internal genitalia, no more male external genitalia, and eventually the person having female internal genitalia. Alright, that's all about our today's lecture. Thank you.